Hello everyone, and welcome back to my channel. Now, today I want to talk about the future of money. The reason I'm bringing this up is that there's two competing ideologies at the moment, capitalism and communism. However, I believe both systems have fundamental flaws, and I don't think either will provide a lasting solution for how our planet's economies will be managed in the coming decades, and perhaps sooner. So, what is capitalism? According to Britannia.com, capitalism is the economic system where the production is privately owned and is guided and distributed largely through the market. In comparison, communism, again according to Britannia.com, is the political economic doctrine to replace private property and profit-based economy with public ownership and communal control of production. Now, these two definitions don't really highlight the issue each system faces. So, what happens when you speak to someone who supports either a capitalist or a communist approach to the economy? For a communist, they typically argue for high taxation to fund more public benefits, expecting wealthy individuals to pay for essential services. But here lies the core problem with communism: it's always someone else's responsibility. As I mentioned in the previous video, a wealthy individual is someone who spends their time and effort creating goods and services. Therefore, a communist wishes to take the wealth of people who work and claim it for their own. This is problematic because we all want public schools and education, hospitals and so on, but let me ask you, the viewer, how far should this expectation go? Should wealthy individuals pay for your healthcare, education, housing or food? I'm sure some would say yes, but what about the other people footing the bill? Over time, the wealthy aren't just paying for the public services everyone uses, but also for things they don't, like food, simply because they're expected to cover their own as well. As time goes on, communists may not consider who is actually paying for these services, or where the resources come from, leading to an increased taxation by the government. This cycle can become never-ending. The more you take from the people who fund the services, the less wealth they have. Eventually, those who were contributing through the taxes might themselves need to rely on the same system because they can no longer afford their own needs. They're paying for everyone else as well. This creates a larger cycle where taxation increases to support more and more people, and as a result, more and more people end up struggling financially. On the other hand, the definition of capitalism doesn't really explain its own major flaw. The biggest concern with capitalism is efficiency, or in other words, do more for less. But before you do get upset, let me explain. Companies today are increasingly adopting artificial intelligence and robotics. But here lies the issue. What happens when the business becomes so efficient that it can run itself with very few staff or none at all? If it can produce goods and services with little human input, then those goods may end up cheap, but for a capitalist economy to function, you need both buyers and sellers. If only a small number of people are working, only a small number of people are earning money. That means there is far less money in the system, so less to spend. Without buyers, companies will quickly go under, as customers dictate the company's success in capitalism. Some of you might think this won't happen, but let's look at the evidence. We already have driverless cars, AI content creators and robots working on Amazon warehouses, or even AI-powered call centres. Some might say that AI won't take over my job. Realistically, it will. It's a matter of when, not if. The most notable examples right now are the workers at Amazon. Boston Dynamics has developed a robot called Atlas, which may be just a few years away from replacing humans in these roles. What about construction? It's only a matter of time before similar robots are used there. Even food production is seeing more automation. Modern farms use robotic tractors and fully automatic hydroponic systems. And if you work on a computer as a programmer or an engineer, your job is just as vulnerable. Many roles involve paperwork and repetitive creative tasks like designing, modelling and documentation compiling, which AI will eventually be able to handle, learn from previous projects, and even managing communications with manufacturers, suppliers and customers. Now, some might argue that companies could choose to employ people instead of AI. True, but remember, in a capitalist society, the customer decides which company survives. If I can buy the same quality of product for far less somewhere else, I probably will. So businesses will be forced to adopt the technologies or risk closure. So if communism leads to the depletion of wealth and societal collapse, and then capitalism will eventually become so efficient that there are no jobs and no money to spend, then what's the solution? Universal basic income. Free money. But before you tune out, hear me out. But first, let me just clarify what I mean by money and wealth, as these terms are often used interchangeably and incorrectly. Wealth is the ability of someone to expend time and effort to create goods and services. Money is a store of wealth. Historically, money, such as gold and silver, required time and effort to obtain. But it's non-perishable, portable, and universally recognised as valuable. Therefore, it can be exchanged for goods and services of equivalent value. Fiat currency is similar. It's portable, non-perishable, but its value differs. Both money and currency have denominations like £2, but fiat currency has been made cheaper by design. This includes removing precious materials, making coins smaller, or simply existing as a digital figure on a screen. It requires less time and effort to create, so its real value has been diminished, allowing wealth to be extracted by those who create the currency. So what is universal basic income? It isn't money in the traditional sense, because it won't be made from valuable materials. It'll most likely be a digital currency, requiring little time and effort to produce. It also won't be a store of wealth, as it is given out before any goods and services have actually been created. Instead, it acts as a way to restrict the access to goods and services. You'll have a set number of currency units to spend as you wish, but only a limited amount. In essence, universal basic income is a pre-distributed fiat currency that everyone receives in limited quantities. So how does this solve the problem? It addresses capitalism's flaw. As AI makes companies more efficient and people lose their jobs, they have no ability to spend, even though there are goods and services still produced. UBI gives consumers spending power, but why is it limited? If everyone could have as much as they wanted, most people would settle for an average house, land, food, energy. But some would want more. There's nothing wrong with ambition, but resources like land are finite. If someone tried to claim the entire country, there'd be nothing left for anyone else. UBI would therefore represent a proportion of the AI-driven output of goods and services, whether from a country or a whole planet. This means that soon our basic needs, food, water, shelter, could be provided by companies run through artificial intelligence. But then comes the big question: what would we do with that time? Many of us have defined ourselves by our careers. If we no longer need to work, what comes next? Although AI will be able to produce goods and services, one thing it cannot do is possess a creative intent. For example, AI could develop a game from start to finish and publish it, but it can't come up with the original idea, the story, and the design concepts in the first place. So, what should we do? The only jobs left in the future will be creative in nature. Rather than knowing how things are made, you'll simply need the creative ideas you want to bring into life. Soon you won't need to be a programmer to make a game or a piece of software, nor an engineer to design equipment, or even need to film studios to create your own film. You only need an idea and an imagination. Perhaps the best thing to do now is reflect on what truly interests you and pursue creative projects based on your own passions. In the future, creativity will be our most valuable asset. Well, hope you enjoyed, and thanks for watching.